And then starting in the beginning, I guess, what were the specific moments or experiences that sort of cracked your belief in the system and had you question the religion itself?
Well, I had a series of episodes happen to me. Once I joined the Sea organization when I was 25, I went to management and I worked over the management of the Western United States churches. They divide the world up into these different continental areas. And so West US is the area I was in. And this was all, again, out of Los Angeles. So during that time, I started seeing behind the curtain a little bit more than you do as a public person or as a lower level staff member at a city level church, like I was in Santa Barbara for 8 years. And I didn't know what was going on internationally, that nobody was briefing us, on the behind the scenes of what it's like. And so once I went up to the management level and I was sort of a middle manager, um, it became clear that there was more and more dedication to money and money and money and get the money in. And there were weekly quotas like $1 million, like make the money. And that wasn't my personal quota, but I mean for our base, right? It was like this week, and of course one of the other problems is they operate week to week to week, so you're on a very short time frame all the time. You're only as good as what you've produced in the last week. So there's a lot of punishment drive in there, and that kind of punishment and that kind of prioritization of money over people was the first thing that got me going. I don't know that this is what I thought it was, but it really took me a number of years. I mean, when you're raised in it, this is your normal. And I really believed in our mission. I thought we were all about saving the world and what they call clearing the planet, and bringing help to people. But I could see that the orders that were coming down from on high were not about that at all. It was just about money, 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 get more people, get more people, get more people, and move people around. And there was all kinds of personnel shuffles going on all the time. And everything was always an emergency, always an emergency. We were always operating at level 10, right? There were very, very, very few times where things would come out of this steep emergency and go into some kind of a chill time, right? That you could measure those kind of periods in days before the next emergency came around. And that got me, after enough of that, you're just on adrenaline exhaustion, and I was in it for 17 years, so I was, it was there was a lot of that. Um, there was also a period of time, about 3 years, which is a real long story, so I'll just try to keep it short. There was about a 3 year stretch, about in that middle of about the middle later period, where I was in a prison program, and there's an internal justice system in Scientology, and I was found guilty of horrible crimes. Um, and so I was put into this prison system. It's called the RPF, or the Rehabilitation Project Force. And I spent 3 years doing that. And this was right in the middle of Hollywood, sequestered away in the basement of this building. And hard physical labor for like 12, 13 hours a day. And yeah, it was rough, so that kind of thing was a little bit of a wake up call. Because after you endure that kind of thing, you're kind of like, wow, what am I doing here? Um, and and then it was just kind of more of the same until I finally reached a point where my final breaking point was, um, I realized one day, as I was sort of putting together my to-do list for the day, this was 2011, I think, that I was telling more lies to people every day about Scientology to get them to come back into Scientology, or to recruit them, or to get money out of them, or whatever I was going to do or being told to do. I needed to lie over and over and over again. I'm not a liar. I don't want to lie. And I didn't get involved in Scientology or join these groups to deceive people. So once I kind of had that moral clarity, that moment of like, oh, wow, wake up call. I suddenly realized this was it. I couldn't participate in this anymore, and I had to do something about it. So it took me about a year to get out, and by the end of 2012, I was out of the Sea Org, but I still believed in Scientology. I just didn't think the Sea Org was a sensible outfit. But I thought the mission and the purpose and what we were doing was still valid. And then I found out all about L. Ron Hubbard by going down the internet rabbit hole, which I had not had access to because there's an awful lot of information control in Scientology. So my access to the internet was extremely limited. And there's a lot of thought policing. You get in a lot of trouble if you look at negative stuff about Scientology. So once I had the freedom to actually kind of do that, I started learning things that I had been completely blacked out on. Like nobody was talking about this stuff inside. I finally watched the South Park episode. I like these kinds. I saw Tom Cruise jumping up and down on a cow. I was like, what the hell? Like just stuff I'd not seen. And so that was just nail in the coffin after nail in the coffin. And within about 4 months, I think it was about a three-month process of diving daily down the internet rabbit hole, right? Of like, oh my God, here's another story, here's another testimonial, here's somebody I knew who got kicked out. Here's what actually happened to them. We were told this whole other story about this person. Here's what they have to say for themselves, right? And so those kind of things were just making it clearer and clearer why there was so much emphasis on money, why they had departed from some kind of mission of helping people, why it was so crazy and emergency driven all the time. Like suddenly all these things made all kinds of sense. And from that point forward, that was in 2013, I started speaking out publicly, but anonymously at first. And the church figured out that it was me, and they busted me. They came and saw me, and I was living in Minnesota at this point because I'd left the Sea Org, and so I was living out there, and they sent some people out there to deal with me, and and then within about 2 months, I was labeled or declared a suppressive person. That's the term they use when they kick you out and shun you. And I lost, I mean, overnight, Facebook friends gone, right? People I'd known for 20 years won't talk to me. I lost a romantic, my fiance, her whole family was like, yeah, you're dead to us. And that was, the final, like, okay, this is what happens. So, 25 years of dedicated service to the church, working my ass off 24/7. And that's your thanks, right? Um, so that's why I started looking from that point forward. What the hell happened to me, and answering that question led to what I do now.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's almost 2 to 3 existential crises at once. Leaving the Sea Org, then leaving Scientology in that process, and then the sort of after effect of everyone deserting you that you knew and loved for your entire life leading up to it. Is that fair to say?
Yep, that's absolutely right. The only reason I was able to keep my family is because my parents, had gotten out before I did. They realized something was up way earlier than me, but I was fully committed, and they, left the church, stopped doing services and stuff, but they weren't at the level I was at. They were just down at the public level. So we were able to maintain communication because they didn't like make a big public spectacle of leaving. They just kind of, we call it under the radar, right? They just
Sure.
kind of left the ship, right? They just kind of took off and stopped doing it and stopped paying for it, and wouldn't take the phone calls and didn't respond to the emails, right? So that was where my parents were at. And so when I decided to leave, they were my initial support system, and helped me to get my feet on the ground so that I could leave. Because if I hadn't had them, I wouldn't have been as felt as safe in leaving.